In this episode, we break down week one of college football, starting with Tennessee's victory over Virginia and then finishing off with Vanderbilt's victory over Alabama A&M. This is a breakdown episode, episode number 94. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the Where's the Line podcast with Joseph West and Britt Dillard. Enjoy the show.
Another edition of Where's the Line. It is Monday, September 4th. This is episode number 94. Week one of college football is in the books. Got a lot to get into today. How are you doing today, Joseph?
Doing good. I'm doing good. Football's back, Britt. Football is back. I know you're doing good because we just got to see a whole slate of games from Friday to Sunday and even tonight that I'm sure we'll be watching with Clemson and Duke. So, man, doing great. Excited for football.
Yeah, it's going into the season, you think you have stuff figured out, like putting parlays together and predictions, and college football just showed us that it's really hard to put a finger on a lot of stuff. A lot of things don't go exactly as they should go with upsets, and the team that's favored is not always going to win the game. And that's a big reason why we love the sport so much.
Very true. Start off hot here with our bets from last week. Me and Britt had the same percentage. We both went 3 for 5, hitting at a good 60%. Actually, pretty bad in week one, 60%, or really good, I guess, depending on who you're talking to. But went 3 for 5. I missed for my games. NC State did not cover. They let me down. Hawaii did not cover their touchdown either. Barely missed that one, but still didn't cover. And then the third game, oh no, I'm sorry, that was my only 2 misses. Britt, who was your 2 misses?
Yeah, I don't feel too bad about my misses. I mean, Ohio State didn't cover against Indiana. Kind of sweated that out for a minute. I thought they might get there, but they did not. And then I missed the over in the first quarter of the Tennessee game, which I'm just going to chalk up to. It's your first game, a new offensive coordinator. It just didn't happen. But yeah, we're both 3 and 5. Both have 3 points on the board after week one. Not terrible. I will definitely do worse.
We're going up from here.
No, I will definitely have worse weeks than I did week one.
But college football's here. Some great games happened throughout the weekend. I would say definitely the biggest talking point just being Colorado versus TCU because of who's at Colorado and being Prime's the coach. It was a really good football game. I got to watch snaps here and there. I kind of switched over there from the UT game in the first half a little bit. So got to watch some snaps. Early take, pump the brakes. TCU lost literally all of their offensive production. They lost Deuce Vaughn. They lost Quentin Johnson. They lost Max Duggan. I'm not a Colorado believer. But also people are surprised that Travis Hunter is good. And that's crazy. Because do people not remember how highly recruited he was? Like, this dude was recruited to play both ways. Like, we knew how good this dude was. Just because he went to Jackson State doesn't mean he automatically got bad. So I think I was kind of frustrated with some of the media, just how they were portraying the game and how, Prime's the greatest coach in college football. Like, brother, it's one game. Pump the brakes. I don't even know if Colorado's good because I don't know if TCU's good.
Yeah.
Like I said, TCU lost a lot of their players. How am I supposed to know if they're good?
Yeah, I mean, Colorado's a team that won one game last year, I believe, and kind of cleaned house, which was a controversial topic. We kind of hit on some in the offseason. Dion processed all the players and brought in a lot of transfers, and I think they were picked to win 3 or 4 games this year. I think their win total was 3.5. So to win the first one against a ranked team on the road, it's a pretty big deal. I think Dion. I think a lot of people are rooting for Dion. Just such a charismatic. I mean, he's a college football legend. His son's a quarterback and balled out
A lot
Saturday.
of people are rooting for Dion except for me. I'm praying on Dion's downfall.
I'm indifferent. I'm not really rooting for him or against him, but I will say he is entertaining.
He is
His
entertaining.
press conference after the game was pretty crazy, calling people out, and he brought the receipts. But we'll have
Yeah,
to see. We'll have to see.
we will. Another game of me just saying I'm not too sure on how good either team is Florida State and LSU. The game itself was great game, good atmosphere. Florida State fans were rocking throughout the game. Um, I had Jaden Daniels as my best quarterback in the SEC in the offseason. I think Britt did too. Britt, is that correct? If you can recall, if you did,
I
whether he didn't,
guess.
he was top three for sure in both of ours. That's sad. He did not look good. He ran the ball well, made some good decisions, didn't make the big time throws. Sometimes he didn't even make the easy throws. I was very unimpressed with LSU when this game was over. Jordan Travis also didn't look great at times, but he did make some big time throws down the sideline of number 4 over his shoulder. Great throw. Hit Wilson on an out route. That was another great throw. So you had some good throws by Travis, but it's just hard in week one for me. And Britt, I want to hear what you have to say on this because I don't know. We have you have the preseason rankings, but I don't think they mean anything. Like when if TCU wins 6 games this year and barely goes to a bowl, then you're like, okay, Colorado's win wasn't really that good. Like they beat an average team at best. And like just because they're ranked, you think it's a good win. And then like LSU last year, they were so hot and cold. Like, are you just gonna get the same thing this year? Is that just Brian Kelly's team? Are just hot and cold? They looked so good one week and then dropped an egg against Tennessee one week and then dropped an egg against who was that a few weeks later? They
A&M.
lost A&M, dropped an egg to them. Like, I don't know. Brett, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, both of these teams are top 10 preseason coming in, especially Florida State with a lot of hype, a lot of people picking them to go to the playoff this year. I have to say the first 2.5 quarters is a very competitive game. I texted you, I said both of these teams look pretty good. I wasn't completely impressed with Travis and what's the LSU guy's name? Daniels. But there's so many names. I'm a bank of knowledge. It's hard to remember. I wasn't entirely impressed with those guys, but I just thought both teams were playing at a very high level, especially defensively. But yeah, preseason rankings, hard to look too much into them. But it is fun to look into them. It's just kind of you've got to start somewhere. And a lot goes into it with like TV ratings and stuff like that to get these high ranked teams in high rated matchups. But coming out of the game, obviously Florida State won pretty big, pulled away at the end. I was impressed with Brian Kelly. He in the press conference, he's like, "Hey, we thought we were 2-time national championship Georgia, but that ain't us." It's like, I don't know what we thought we were, but we ain't that. So I mean, hats off to him
Respect.
for laying it out there. Unlike Shane Beamer, who blamed the chain game for eating a hot dog when they
That was
lost.
funny. That was funny.
I think Brian Kelly's a good coach. I think LSU has a lot of talent. I know they have a lot of talent. I know he's a good coach. So I wouldn't panic too much there. I mean, Florida State may just be the real deal. We'll have to see.
Yeah, and they could be. Florida State's got a lot of weapons on offense, and their defense looked solid, if not above solid, throughout the night too. So Florida State could be the real deal. We'll see. Enough of the teams that may matter to others. Let's talk about the teams that matter to us. Britt had an early kickoff in Nashville at Nissan Stadium. 65,000 plus in the stadium. Tennessee kicked off their season against the Virginia Cavaliers. Britt was in attendance. Britt, early initial thought right here. Give it to me.
Initial thought, it was hot as hell at the game. And I don't know. I think there was 69,000 was the reported attendance. I would say 65,000 of those were Tennessee fans. It was a Tennessee home game. I mean, They had Tennessee's PA announcer. They did starting lineups only for Tennessee. It was orange, was all over all the graphics. It was a home game for Tennessee. And Tennessee won the game 49-13. Was able to cover the 28 points from DraftKings. Just my overall impression, I came out of this game feeling good. I saw some things that I wanted to see. Still, obviously, some questions. It's just your first game, kind of getting warmed up. Like I kind of mentioned, you've got a new offensive coordinator with Joey Hasley. He's a first-time coordinator. But I'm just going to jump right in.
Go ahead, jump right in. I'm ready.
Cannonball right here.
Okay.
The thing I said I was worried the most about was Joe Milton in the pocket. There were a few plays that I saw improvement there. I saw Joe move up in the pocket, make some throws. I saw him move up, look through all his reads, and then take off running. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. I thought he did a good job in the pocket, helped by the offensive line. I thought the offensive line, for who we had out there, I thought they looked pretty good. They only gave up 1 sack, had almost 300 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns. So I think the questions at offensive line and with Joe Milton's pocket presence, I don't know if they were answered there, but I think we saw improvement for sure there. Your running backs looked great. Jalen Wright started. He's kind of separated himself there as a legit SEC running back. I would say top half of the SEC. And then Jabari Small and Dylan Sampson looked solid as well. Sampson had 3 or 4 total touchdowns. Offensively, more into Joe Milton. I didn't think his accuracy was a problem. I think there was 3 passes, maybe 4 at most, that looked like old Joe Milton. Kind of just unnecessarily hard, high, and maybe a little bit too far. But he completed 70% of his passes, threw for 200 yards. Had an early drop on a deep ball. I think that may have affected the play calling for the rest of the game. But Joe Milton made some great throws Saturday. The one to Keaton that was dropped, and Ramel Keaton doesn't drop that ball. 99.9% of the time that's a catch. But that was a great throw by Joe. Another one to Brew McCoy in the corner of the end zone, just barely out of bounds. It was a great throw and a great catch. I thought Joe Milton didn't look perfect. He has his issues, but I think Joe Milton looked good enough. I think the Joe Milton that we saw in the Clemson game is good enough to win 9 games. And I think that was about the level we saw Saturday.
Right.
Virginia's not a great team. I'm not saying that that's the kind of defense we're going to see all year. But without getting too far into, I'm going to talk on defense next. I'll let you have the floor for a minute.
Yeah, so first of all, I love this. Josh Pate put it on Twitter. I just wanted to make this quote because that is what I am living by until for last week and this week. Quote, this is by Josh Pate's Meemaw, by the way, just to let you know. Wise men make observations in week 1 while foolish men draw conclusions. I say that to say that I'm making observations on Tennessee based off who they played, and I'm not drawing conclusions on who they're going to be in week 12 or week 10 or even week 8. To start off, special teams for Tennessee was not great, especially in the first half. You had a 27-yard punt. You failed to down one inside the 5. You fumbled a punt as well. So had some bad special teams miscues. My very next point was the drop by Keaton, which Britt already touched on. Just can't have those. He's going to catch that ball. I agree with Britt 90% of the time. Just a drop. I have all the plays they were almost in a row. There was 2 plays in between them. Britt already talked about them. He said it was 4 throws. I have that it was 5. Regardless, there was 4 to 5 throws that I thought Milton, he either just put way too much heat in the kitchen. There was one on like a little flat route where he threw it just like 100 miles per hour.
Oh, yeah. And that was all in one drive.
Okay. Yeah, it's all in one drive, correct.
There was one drive in particular where there were three not great throws. One of them could have and probably should have been caught by Ramel Keaton. But also, there's a play mixed in there. I think it was the throw to Keaton that you've got Dante Thornton running wide open down the sideline
Really?
for a touchdown. But yeah, I, I'm glad you said 5. I said 4. We're not too far off there. Special teams was bad. Your punter, he's an Australian. This was his first ever football game. This was the first football game he's ever played in. His first 2 punts were terrible. I hate the rugby style.
The 27-yard punt looked so bad.
I never thought I would miss Paxton Brooks, but he came back. He had 2 very good punts. The one that should have been downed within the 5-yard line, and then he had one that the guy it was right on the sideline, and he caught it and just ran straight out of bounds.
Yeah.
That's as good as you can ask for, but go ahead.
By the way, I'm only speaking on until about the 9-minute mark in the third quarter. I left after that, and I didn't go back and watch this game. So anything I talk about will be till the 9-minute mark in the third quarter, and then after that, it'll be all Britt. If he wants to talk about what they did and what I would consider at that point scrub time. I did put on here, luckily for Tennessee, Virginia's offense was terrible. Their right tackle could not block me. He didn't get hands on whoever was rushing the passer. It was a different guys a few different times. He didn't even get hands on him for like 5 plays in a row. Didn't even touch him. He might be the worst right tackle in Power 5 football. Like I've never seen somebody just not. The announcers were literally going back and circling. They were like, "Wait, he didn't even touch him." And then it was 5. It was 4 or 5. I don't want to get the wrong numbers here. They kept going back on the TV and circling him. And I was just like, this dude is terrible. But anyways, I was able to get the stats. Here is Joe Milton's passing numbers. I'm going to go by distances here. So Joe Milton threw 11 passes behind the line of scrimmage. He was 11 for 11 for 67 yards. Joe Milton threw 8 passes that were 1 to 10 yards. He was 5 for 8 with 37 yards. Passes 11 to 20 yards. He was 4 for 5 for 55 passing yards and a touchdown. And passes 20 plus yards. He was 1 for 6 for 41 yards. I read those stats and wanted to get them to say that last year when I thought Tennessee's offense, I thought home run plays, 25 plus yard plays, the home run hitters, Jalen Hyde-esque, even though that's not all that Tennessee's offense is, because they do love to run the ball and make drives down the field. When I think of Tennessee's offense off the top of my head, I think explosive. Milton wasn't great at making those explosive plays. Now, one of those passes should have been caught, but the one that was caught was severely underthrown to Keaton. Britt, I don't know if you remember that pass. He had to really slow down and then kind of like curdle, I guess, to catch the ball there. So I think that kind of balances out. But if you look at Milton's total numbers at halftime, it didn't look too bad. But like I was saying, a lot of it was kind of dump offs behind the line of scrimmage, 2 to 3 yards past the line of scrimmage. So I don't know how much you can put into it. If I was a Tennessee fan after halftime, I would have been very concerned with how Joe Milton had played. And even in your special teams unit, I didn't know this was the first time this guy was punting, but that definitely makes me nervous if I'm Tennessee fans when you get an SEC play. Field position is huge in SEC play, so they're going to need to figure out punter for sure. And that would just be kind of my overview of the game. I didn't want to talk about defense because you said we were waiting, right? I didn't want to talk about the defense too much. Okay, cool. Go ahead, Britt, with the defense.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with anything you said. A lot of dump downs, and I'll kind of get into that in one of my breakdowns, talk about the play calling. But looking at the defense, I thought the front 7 looked as good, if not better, than last year. I think that was a very solid unit last year. Having Rodney Garner as the defensive line coach and recruiting that position has been so huge for Tennessee the last 2 years or 3 years now. But front 7 looked great. Young guys playing a lot. Aaron Carter, we saw him. He looks like an absolute monster out there. I thought, talking about bad punts and then also some questionable coaching, put the defense in some bad spots, especially early. And I thought they did a good job not allowing points off of those short punts and short fields. Secondary looked solid. The secondary looked good, and I know you can't make conclusions like Joseph said, just observations. Against this Virginia offense, the secondary looked good. Hats off to Kamal Hadden. Had 2 pass breakups. He was covering their number 1 receiver. Kamal Hadden looked good. There's no other way to put it. He looked good. He looked solid. So proud of Tim Banks and those guys. Willie Martinez. Depth has helped this defense more than anything else. Just having guys to put in, especially in the secondary, has really shown to cause some improvement.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I was going to say, the main reason I said make observations, not draw conclusions, is because this Tennessee front seven did look good, really good actually. But like I was saying, Virginia's offensive line also looks really bad. I mean, I don't know who those 2 guys that they kept rotating in were coming off the edge, but they're not Nick and Joey Bosa. They may be good, but they're not looking to be a first-round draft pick as far as I know. I haven't heard anybody on the ballots from UT as far as like a D end getting drafted in the top 10. So you shouldn't be getting speed rushed every play. That led me to believe that Virginia's offensive line was just that bad, and that that's why I don't know how much stake to put into the defense. And then in the secondary, they did have some pass breakups, like Brett was saying. But this quarterback didn't have time to go pick. Like, this dude didn't have time to do anything. Even when he did, his throws were lackluster. I think that it was hard for me to say anything about Tennessee's defense. Honestly, in this game, I think that the real test may not even be until Florida, where you can really get a grasp on what the defense maybe is, and then how Joe Milton looks when the pressure's on. I think would be my biggest question mark for the offense.
Yeah, and it being so early in the year, I am excited for that Florida game just to get some pressure, to get some I don't know what the word I'm looking for, to overcome some adversity. Like last year, look at the Pitt game. Early in the year, Tennessee came out flat. They had to fight and overcome to win that game. And I think that helped the 23 team a lot, just having to fight. And so Tennessee, not just because they're going to be pretty heavily favored against Florida, and by heavily favored I mean maybe a touchdown, but definitely expected to win that game. Even though that is the case, I think they're going to be tested, and I think it's necessary for this team to grow into what Tennessee fans want them to be in the future. So we got Austin Peay next week, night game in Knoxville. Similar to Virginia this week, probably easier, but have another week to build confidence.
Have another preseason game, basically.
Yeah,
that's
for
the way
sure.
Vanderbilt game. That's the way Vanderbilt fans have been talking about it. You got 2 preseason games where you got to strap up the boots and go to work.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know just how changing college football is. I don't know how much longer we'll have games like this. So we'll see. But I've got 3 takeaways. I'm going to go ahead and get into them.
Hit them.
Number 1, defense has taken an obvious step. Depth helps. I think that's the main cause for this. We have good coaches on defense, and I'm sure the guys have worked hard, but the depth is going to help them more than anything. I think the defensive line is set up to have a big year. I know you said you didn't see any guys that were projected. Tennessee's got some young guys that are very good. James Pierce, Joshua Josephs, and then you've got Tyler Barron, who's a veteran there. All those are edge guys that are set up to be really good this year. Number 2, Tennessee's running back room is top 3 in the SEC. I was talking to a guy, a mutual friend of ours, last night about this, and he was saying Tennessee has the best running back room in the SEC. I told him I don't know if I'm willing to go that far because I don't even know who Georgia and Alabama's running backs are, but I'm sure they have the 2 best rooms.
Especially Georgia's.
I'm sure they have the 2 best rooms in the SEC just with their offensive lines.
Also, do not forget about Ole Miss either. I mean,
Yeah,
Ole Miss
yeah.
has two studs in their running back room. So I mean, Ole Miss, I think for me would be top 2 in the SEC for sure. I don't know who Bama's running back is either, but still, I don't think that's crazy. But saying top 3 or 4 in the SEC, I think might be fair.
I mean, Tennessee's got 5 guys that they feel confident with playing. I mean, you saw Dylan Sampson's our third guy, and he had 4 touchdowns Saturday. So definitely excited about that. My third point, I kind of talked about this earlier, is the play calling. I think Josh Heupel is kind of playing chess here. I think he's proven that he's a good coach, good play caller. But Dante Thornton was one of the best wide receivers in the portal this year, and he had 3 targets, 2 catches. I don't think you're going to see 3 targets to Thornton against Florida. I just don't think that's going to happen. And you said
Some of
there
that's
was
on Milton.
I mean, there was only one throw to Thornton that was questionable, the one that he didn't catch, and then the one that he misread and just didn't see. They will work on that. But you said we only took 6 shots down the field of more than 20 yards.
20 plus.
That's not going to be common. That's not what you saw the last 2 years, and that's not what you're going to see this year either. So that's my third point. I think Josh Heupel is really not only building confidence for this offense early, but I think he's also holding a lot back right now.
That quote right there that Britt just said always makes you sound like the biggest homer of all time, like ever. When you say the coaches weren't doing it, like the game was closer than it should have been, or they did this, but it was because the coaches held back, that always makes you sound like the biggest homer of all time. But I think there's some truth to it, and I'm going to get into that in Vanderbilt's game too.
Yeah, but
so
I mean,
I'm glad you said that first before I had to say it, because I'm going to say a very similar sentence.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee's playing Virginia, a team that they didn't have to go out and run plays like you did against Alabama last year. I mean, this team, it's their first game back after 3 of their players were murdered. They haven't played since, so I don't think there was any reason for Josh Heupel to unload the playbook, especially with the score at half. I mean, you were up 3 scores, but the last 9 minutes, you said you didn't watch. Not much happened. Virginia scored with their first touchdown. Nico came in, had 3 decent drives, so it was pretty cool.
All right. Well, my takeaways for the Tennessee game is that I don't really have a set takeaways. I'm just going to have one, and it's going to be that Tennessee's team is going to go as far as Joe Milton goes, and that is going to also be just little insider info here. That is going to be my number 1 takeaway in the Vanderbilt game as well. So just be ready for that.
Yeah, Tennessee. This is Joe's team. He's not going to be pulled unless Tennessee is like 5-3 after 8 games. Joe Milton's going to start every game this year. But Tennessee 1-0.
1-0.
Playing the P boys next week. Let's get into Vanderbilt.
1-0 is good. It's not quite as good as 2-0. The Commodores are 2-0.
That is true.
I do want to say that last week, this is where we're going to start. Britt Dillard came on this podcast very similar to what I started with for UT today. He said Vanderbilt's special team was a disappointment. Was disappointing was the exact word he used. I had to go back in the podcast to make sure I got that right. Well, I sent the clips to the special teams unit and they heard him. They went crazy. They downed a punt at the 2-yard line. They blocked a punt. The special teams in this game from Vanderbilt was absolutely flawless. They did everything right. We almost returned 2 punts to the house. We had like 2 60-yard returns. Yeah, special teams was great in this game. I did just want to start there and say that we bounced back really well in that area. Outside of that, the first half was atrocious. The first half was absolutely, it was so generic, and that was why this is where I was going to start after special teams, which is why Britt said it. It just looked like our coaching staff said, we're going to run the most basic plays, like plays you call up during recess, I would be pointing to Britt on the football. Britt, here's the play. And it's going to work just because we're that much better. And we're going to go off, right? And it was like we didn't really have an identity. And it didn't work. It just didn't. I don't know. Maybe the guys just once again were kind of overlooking. Maybe they're playing down to their competition. I can't tell you what it is. I'm not in the locker room. But the first half was bad. I mean, that's the best way to put it. This game at halftime was 12-3. You're playing Alabama A&M. That's pretty unacceptable. And at halftime, I said 2 weeks ago I was never nervous. I wasn't nervous that we were going to lose to Alabama A&M at halftime, but I was like, oh my God, is everything that I think about this team wrong? Is everything that I've heard about the progression of this team incorrect? Have I got on fool's gold? And that's what the feeling was at halftime for me. Will Shepherd dropped the ball in the first half. I do have that here. He dropped the ball on a little fake, absolutely shook the wide receiver. AJ Swan overthrew him just a bit. He had to kind of lay out, but it hit his hands. He's got to catch that ball, especially when I consider him the best wide receiver in the SEC. You're the best, you catch it. So that would be my notes up until halftime. I don't go over any specific plays because it's the exact same thing every time. When I was going through them, I was going to say, oh, this was horrible, this was horrible, this was horrible. Well, let's just group it all into one. It was all freaking horrible. So it's all together. Unless you were on special teams, it freaking sucked. Defense did well outside of the first drive. But I'm going to talk about the defense a lot in the second half, so I'm not going to stick in the first half too long. Britt, any comments, concerns about the first half?
Yeah, the first drive, I had somebody text me and say, "Are you watching this Vanderbilt game?" And I wasn't. So I flipped over, and Vanderbilt's defensive line was getting absolutely shredded that first drive. I want to say they held them. Did they hold them to a field goal?
Did hold to a field goal.
Yeah, but got down there in the red zone. So that's my first point is, and okay, I'm stumbling over my words, but you made a comment that you didn't know if they were playing down a competition or what. I think if you look, not only with Clark Lee, but just over the past several years, I think Vanderbilt football 100% plays up or down to competition. Whenever Vanderbilt gets really up, they play a lot better.
Yeah.
They play a lot better when the crowd's into it, when there's some buzz behind them. Last year against Florida and Kentucky, they had some buzz going. They came out like their hair was on fire and beat two SEC teams. But that's something that once you learn to win more, and once you get that kind of culture going, I think that goes away. But yeah, I mean, the first quarter was rough for Vanderbilt. I think they had a safety.
Yeah, we got a safety on
defense.
Punt.
I was looking; it was like 5-3 at one point. I was like, "What is going on?" But not much other than that. No.
Second half was simple. Vanderbilt was the team I thought they were all year. The team that I talked about in the offseason, that's who this Vanderbilt team turned into. Wasn't all perfect during the second half by any means, but this defense did show me something. This defense showed me that if they don't allow the home run play, they're actually not bad. If they don't get beat on a 60-yard go, they're not bad. But even like against Alabama A&M in the third quarter, we gave up a 50-yard touchdown pass. Like, he just straight up beat his man down the sideline. And it was just because he literally wasn't paying attention, is what I think it was. He was like, oh, crap, he's about to stop. He went to go turn his hips. As soon as he did, turn on the Jets, down the sideline, touchdown. Outside of that one play in the first drive of the season, the first drive of the game, they barely had any yards. We shut them down. The defense was lights out. Vanderbilt's front seven's actually good. I talked about it all offseason, and I was sitting here scratching my head the whole time, especially the first drive. I was like, how are they getting blown over right now? What is going on? So, second half is simple. Vanderbilt balled. Commodores rolled. We, outside of one play, it was all Vandy. And we had to be back because we were in shambles. I got to see Ken Seals come in. I got to see Walter Taylor come in. I got to see young guys step up. And ultimately, I saw a guy on 247 who I had asked a question about the routes and the offense that we were running. I was like, hold on. I haven't seen this, and this that we saw in fall camp, and I hadn't seen this, and this that we saw in the spring game. I haven't seen these route trees. I haven't seen these formations. Like, why haven't we ran any of those? And one of the guys who I think is a parent of someone on the team, but I obviously don't know, just by some of the insider information that he gives, I would assume, he was like, I really think the coach staff's been holding back. They haven't ran a lot of their plays. We've kept them under. We're running a lot of vanilla stuff right now. I think they thought we could beat them both by 60 without running anything complicated. So maybe the coaches misjudged where they were or how their guys were going to play. I don't know. But regardless, we started slow, and at halftime I was in shambles. And when the game ended, I was like, this Vanderbilt team's who I think they are. 6-7 wins are still on the table, in my opinion. I think we still could get to 7. I'm a sunshine pumper right now. And this Vanderbilt team, they have the juice. They just got to get it active. They just got to get it activated. And I think that's what it was. Like, all of a sudden, like 5 minutes into the third quarter, they were like, oh, holy crap, we're way better than you at football. Let me implement how much better I am than you. And they just started going crazy. Will Sheppard is the most unstoppable person in college football in the red zone. Marvin Harrison, freaking whoever else you want to throw in there, they're not as unstoppable as Will Sheppard. Will Sheppard is catching the ball if he's in the red zone, and no one's stopping him. Put 3 dudes on him if you want to stop him. That's my only thing. They had 2 guys on him. He lost both of them. Put 3 on him. That's my biggest thing about that I want to say in the second half. Will Sheppard in the red zone, unstoppable. There you go. And I got my takeaways, but I wanted to let you get in too.
Yeah, Will Sheppard is a very solid player. Probably should have transferred this year. My thing is Vanderbilt has
no slander.
These first 2 games in week 0 and week 1, Vanderbilt had an opportunity to show some dominance. And I mean, they almost probably should have lost to Hawaii. And then I
think that's such a bad take.
5 minutes left in the third quarter, and it is 19-10 against Alabama A&M.
I only care about the final score.
I mean, if
Coward. By the way, Coward, Alabama A&M head coach, cost me money, kicked a field goal with 2 minutes left. He needs to be investigated right now. Whoever is listening to this podcast in the NCAA, investigate Alabama A&M's head coach. The spread was minus 35, and he kicked a field goal to go down 34. Someone told that man to kick that field goal during the timeout. I want to know who it was. He cost me a lot of money. So I need that live on this pod. But yeah, no, listen, everyone loves to hate on Vandy, by the way. I'm not surprised from Britt saying that we should have lost the Hawaii game. Literally, no, we should have. I'm not hating.
That was my initial response. That was my initial response when I first watched the game. And I mean, the difference between Tennessee holding back and Vanderbilt holding back is we don't know if Vanderbilt can be good on offense. We haven't seen Joey Lynch be electric like we've seen Josh Heupel on offense. So let's work some of that out before you need it.
True, but also if you know what you have offensively, I don't think you have, like, if you've worked on it throughout camp and you know what you have, I don't think you even want to show it. You don't even want to show it. If you don't have to show it, why show it? It just doesn't, to me, it doesn't make any sense to get it on film. You don't even want them to see the formations. Like, I truly believe Vanderbilt's going to break out in some formations when I'm in North Carolina screaming my head off that we haven't seen all year. If they don't, then I'll come on this podcast with a different shade of light. But for now, I truly believe it. And the doors rolled in the second half. I think they just needed to click. I think it took a while for them to click. They hadn't played 4 quarters of football yet. They still haven't. They played 2 quarters against Hawaii and then kind of cut off the gas. Did the same thing against Alabama and A&M. Didn't show up for the first 2 quarters. Turned it on for the last quarter and a half. And, you know, it's what it was. I obviously have my concerns about this team. But doors rolled in the second half. I came out with a positive feeling instead of Hawaii was so negative because it was ending. It would be very similar to if the Virginia and Tennessee game was reversed, and they started off hot and got up like 28-7, and then maybe Virginia gets a score in there, and then it's 28-14, and UT doesn't score again, and the final score is 28-14. You'd have a really sour taste in your mouth just because it went south later in the game. That's what you remember. All I can remember is the fourth quarter in that game. That's it. Swear. I can't remember anything negative before that. All I can remember is the positives.
Well, I hope
It
Clark
happened,
Lee
happened
and the
last.
boys remember the first half because they've got to get it fixed or they're
No,
not winning 5 games.
they need to remember. Also, there is 1 second here. There's 6 people I have receipts on. They'll be coming out this year. They're coming out live on the pod as they happen. Receipts come out. So I just want to let everybody know that. Just to let
I
you
know
know, if
I'm
I
in there.
follow you, Brit's on there for sure. That was a given. But there's a few other people that listen to this podcast, and I have you on Twitter. Your receipts will get read as they come true this football season because they will. Here's my takeaways from the game. First takeaway, I already said it. It's the same thing as Joe Milton. This team goes as AJ Swan goes. AJ Swan has insane talent. His arm talent's great. I don't know if anybody's seen the crazy play he made. He breaks 2 sacks, goes off to his left, throws it across his body to Justin Ball. Great play. That was Eli Manning-esque. Very, very impressed with him sometimes. But he struggles with consistency. Similar to what I'll say with Milton, he struggles with getting through his progressions and exactly where to go with the football. Sometimes I think he likes. First of all, AJ Swan makes a lot of adjustments at the line of scrimmage. I don't think a lot of people know that. This dude's a true sophomore, 19 years old. He's making in-game reads at the line of scrimmage himself. He has control to do that. That's crazy. They said he changed the play for the Will Shepherd touchdown. So kudos to him. So it's a lot for him to keep up with and learn. And I get it. I don't think you can be too hard on him. The point is that he's going to have to grow fast. It's part of the game. That's takeaway number 1, AJ Swan. Number 2, the defense has a lot of promise when they take the home run away. If you make guys take consistent drives down the field on Vanderbilt, I like our chances. But just don't let them score 60-yard home runs. You're good. The young guys on this Vanderbilt team, Jeffrey Hugo, Martell Height, Cedric Alexander, Junior Sherrill, you can keep going. They're legit. Cedric Alexander came in and to me has to be the running back 1 moving forward. Broke 4 tackles, scored a touchdown down the left side, hurdled a guy. Absolutely amazing to see that. Just dude was a dog. He's got to see more playing time. Junior Sherrill caught a pass from Ken Seals and absolutely blew by like 6 guys. Dude, he might be faster than McGowan. He says he has game time speed that he can only run that fast in the game. So I don't know if that's true or if that's possible. That's what he says, and he did look really fast. So Junior Sherrill, this Vanderbilt defense is also going to get bolstered against Wake Forest. You get Darren Agu back. You're getting Christian James back. So you are going to get some extra help on the defensive line. Hopefully be able to move Issa back in the middle, in the inside there to give them some extra depth. I think this Vanderbilt defense is actually going to play much better against Wake Forest, but that's a talk for the next episode, not for here.
Yep. I'm going to get into my takeaways. Number 1, the defensive line. You just kind of stole it. They need some help. They're getting help. Hopefully they can improve against Wake Forest, and then get some kind of continuity against UNLV. Number 2, AJ Swan can be really good.
Agreed.
I think you saw him make some moves in the pocket and some very good throws in this game. AJ Swan can be very good. And my 3rd point, Will Shepherd is a beast.
He is that.
He's a beast.
Everyone knows me knows that I just love Will Shepherd. I'll never go against that man. When he dropped that ball, I had his jersey on at the game, and when he dropped that ball, I just immediately I just fell down. Did you see that? Were you watching when he dropped that ball?
Yeah.
It could have been a bit, and the guy in front of me was like, "Oh, AJ Swan's got to make that a better pass." Brother, it hit him in the hands. Like, dude, he considers himself the best wide receiver in the SEC. Best wide receiver in the SEC. He's catching that. You got to catch it. I do think he catches that most of the times, by the way, but that's besides the point.
When you're really good, it doesn't matter if you play for Jackson State. We saw that. It doesn't matter if you play for Vanderbilt. It doesn't matter if you play for Alabama. If you're a good player, you will get recognized as such.
100% you will.
Yep.
This next week, you've got Austin Peay in Tennessee. You've got Vanderbilt and Wake Forest. Me and Britt will be preparing the breakdowns, getting you some betting advice. That will probably be hitting you Thursday morning. So be looking out for that. Britt, besides that, any closing thoughts here?
No, my heart is clear.
Well, hey, listen, it's been Joseph West and Britt Dillard here on Where's the Line. Anchor down. Anchor
Go
down.
Vols. Go Vols.